So I've talked a lot on this channel about the different levels of conscious awareness, and the one that we sort of rest on and settle in is the idea of surrender consciousness, the idea that something greater than oneself acts through you, and that we find the faith to allow that to happen, to let go of control, to see beneath the story of oneself. And analogies can be useful here to give an intellectual model for what I just said, because there isn't much in there that is understandable in terms of being able to write down and give to somebody for them to read and know what we are pointing to here. This is the impossibility of describing the indescribable and trying to explain the mystery of life. It is a leap of faith, a leap into the unknown. We can point to the illusion of self that is getting in the way, but what is it getting in the way of? So, to that end, we will discuss an analogy that I came up with in my book, No Path to Enlightenment, and that is the water wheel analogy. To the best of my knowledge, this is my analogy, but of course there could have been others that have written this before. And so we liken the individual self, me, you. We can call it a mind-body unit. We can call it a person, an individual self, a biological organism, a human being. That individual can be likened to a water wheel. And so the water wheel has a structure that allows it to move, but the movement isn't innate in the structure itself. It's important that the structure is designed in a certain way, but of course we all recognize and acknowledge that it is the river that allows the water wheel to turn and to produce whatever product it is designed to facilitate. And of course the analogy is that the river is the mystery of life, the flow of life. The power and force and flow comes from the river, and that moves the water wheel, and then the water wheel produces. And so we are designed in a certain way. We have a certain structure that allows the divine within, or the pure conscious awareness, the Tao, to flow through us, and we can thereby create. We can fulfill our potential. We can be in the world, and we can act and affect things, other things. We can be productive. But that innate power isn't within us. We aren't the prime mover in our own story. So the surrender is the idea that we are the water wheel. We do exist, but not in the manner we think, and we then recognize that it is the river, the flow of the river, that moves us. That is from our perspective. Now, the river knows nothing of this. The river is the river. That is the flow, that is the way, that is the Tao. It seems to flow through us. The river doesn't recognize our individual stories, the illusionary self. Why would it? So in this analogy, I have separated out the water wheel from the river. for purposes of the analogy, and it's good in as far as it goes to try to point to the fact that surrender to the flow, to the river, is a different perspective, rather than believing that the power and energy and force comes from within ourselves, that the water wheel is moving of its own volition without needing the flow of the river beneath it. And of course that's a dualistic perspective I've just given. So we use an analogy, and sometimes a spark from the known can jump and ignite the unknown, and so we can just allow that to be. In actual fact, of course, there is no separation between the individual self and the Tao on the way. It is one unfolding perfection of being. But of course, in our intellectual mind, we need to break things down into the known, and so the analogy is, we know what a water wheel is, and we know what a river is, and we know the connection between the two, and so that can be a useful analogy as a first step into recognizing that there is something else that is happening through us. In fact, we are that. And we can try to name it, and we can try to describe it, and I seem to be wanting to do that. I've written a book, and I talk here, and I work with people around the world in this exploration of self. But it is equally valid to just stay silent. And so the water wheel and the river are necessarily separate for the purposes of the analogy, but in actual fact there is just what is happening, and that is perfection. And then we try to understand that, and we get in the way of that perfection. And so perhaps the answer is to drop into silence, and perhaps I might do that one day. But for the time being, I'm going to keep talking and writing. If you like the content, please leave a thumbs up, add comments and questions below, and if you haven't already done so, then please subscribe. Thank you.